Well, welcome to our small tribute to the Chartists of 1842 who were campaigning in Nottingham for decent wages, a living wage, at a time when people weren't allowed to organise in that way. We are on the top of Mapperley Hill, at the start of the Mapperley Plains, where a battle took place 170 years ago between the Chartists and between the police and the 2nd Dragoons. Tom, the 2nd Dragoons, what kind of a force were they?
The 2nd Dragoons, the Royal Scots Greys, the heroes of Waterloo, captured the French Eagle, were tough, well-trained and well-disciplined soldiers. Their discipline would mark their courage today.
So, that was quite a force that happened upon what was a peaceful rally taking place at Mapperley Hill Common. 5,000 people had come and they'd met in the middle of the day and they'd sat down in the afternoon. As it's phrased at that time, they sat down to eat their dinner. And it was at that time that the police and dragoons came and arrested 400 of them. When they were arrested, Tom, were they bound?
Yes, they were bound at the hands and at the legs and made immovable to reaction to this force.
So they were then taken away, 400 of them, with the rest of the crowd somewhat anxious, following them down, wondering where they were being taken to, and getting particularly anxious at two places along the march to their ultimate destination of Nottingham Jail, which was then what is now known as the Galleries of Justice. The first situation where problems broke out for the police and the dragoons was when the marchers had reached the bottom of Red Lane and the junction of Mansfield Turnpike. Today these streets are known as Redcliffe Road and Mansfield Road. And at that point the following supporters of the 400 arrested started throwing stones. Tom, where would they have got the stones from?
Well, as that area at the time was actually farmland, stones would have been very common. And as the actual road was made of cobbles and they would have been quite loose, stones were quite easily obtained.
So that was what was the start of what was actually known as the Battle of Mapperley Hills. It took place at that junction. And there was one other occasion where a battle took place, and that was at the top of York Street, an area which is now known, which you can now see as a modern and significant bus stop at the top of the Victoria Centre shopping centre. So, fairly quickly, despite being bound, that the Chartists that were arrested were actually taken to Nottingham Prison. Most of them were released within a couple of hours, but some had to pay some form of fine, £5. How much would £5 have been worth then, Tom?
For most common worker earning 6p a day, that would have been at least 4 months' wages.
So, some though served a prison sentence, 2 months, some served 4 months, and some served 6 months. But it really was an outrage. These were people on not much money, fighting for a living wage, and they came to meet peacefully and they were arrested, and that broke up the strike. And the testimony to what was said is written here. A party of poor, starving, defenceless men, seated at their hard begged-for meal beneath the canopy of heaven and on the carpet provided by nature, all to be surprised surrounded by dragoons and police and dragged through the streets to jail when they are not committing the shadow of an illegal act. So the outrage was there, and the Chartists carry on campaigning, of course, and of course Nottingham was the only city to elect a Chartist MP, which happened 5 years later. The big story in many ways though was that it was not a repeat of Peterloo, which had happened in Manchester about 25-30 years earlier, where I think 19 people lost their lives. Why would a militia in Manchester have ended up killing people when the dragoons did not in Nottingham?
The yeomanry, led by arrogant sons of mill workers, were quite quick and quite eager to put down any strikers. Their actions were unjust, unkind and undrilled. They were not professional soldiers.
So for some years after the Battle of Mapperley Hills, the Labour movement did actually celebrate the the battle as an expression of their indignation at the injustice of what had happened. Hasn't been celebrated for some time now, but we thought it might be nice if for today at least we did a plaque in the style of the plaques that are on display at St Peter's Field in Manchester, where the Peterloo massacre took place. And that's the end of our little tribute to the Chartists of 170 years ago, that radical force in Nottingham who fought for what we now regard as basic democratic rights.